Hello everyone, and welcome back to Sun Moon Audiobook, the channel where we share wisdom and inspiring book journeys to help you grow and develop your best self, inside and out. A drop of rain falls into a still pond, sending ripples outward in perfect circles, touching every corner of the water's surface. That's how joy works too. A single spark inside the heart, one shift in how we see the world, can ripple outward through our work, our relationships, and our sense of what's possible. Happiness is not just a fleeting feeling. It is the quiet energy that reshapes everything it touches. It is the ripple that changes the whole pond. The voice we lean into today belongs to Shawn Achor, a Harvard-trained researcher who has spent his life studying happiness, success, and the deep psychology of human thriving. He is not speaking from a mountaintop, not holding answers above us, but instead inviting us into a truth he discovered in classrooms, in corporate boardrooms, and within himself, that happiness does not follow success, but rather success follows happiness. His message is radical in its simplicity. The world tells us to work harder, achieve more, climb higher, and then happiness will arrive as a prize. Shawn tells us the opposite. Cultivating happiness now, wherever we are, becomes the very advantage that makes everything else possible. And when you hear it spoken like this, you can feel how true it is. Imagine waking each morning not weighed down by the burdens of what must be accomplished, but lifted by the joy of being alive, energized by gratitude, by possibility, by connection. This is the heart of the happiness advantage. Happiness is not a mood to chase, but a state of being that fuels every other part of life. It sharpens our minds, strengthens our resilience, deepens our relationships, and multiplies our capacity for success. The ripple begins inside and extends everywhere. Shawn shares research that reveals something astonishing. Our brains, when positive, are 31 more productive than when neutral, negative, or stressed. Salespeople in a positive state of mind outperform their peers by 37. Doctors make accurate diagnoses nearly 20 faster when their mindset is primed with joy. This is not wishful thinking. It is biology, psychology, lived reality. The way we feel shapes the way we perform. Happiness is not a reward, but a tool. It is the lever we can pull to move the weight of our lives. Think of it like planting seeds in soil. If the soil is dry, rocky, and starved of nutrients, no matter how strong the seed, it will struggle. But when the soil is rich, soft, watered, the seed does not just survive, it thrives. Our mind is the soil, and positivity is the nourishment. Without it, the seed of our potential struggles. With it, everything grows more easily. And so the happiness advantage is simply this. When we nourish the soil of our mind, the garden of our life flourishes. But Shawn goes deeper. He does not leave us with only a beautiful idea, he gives us practices. He shows us how to reshape our brains to tip the balance toward joy. One of the first practices he reveals is the power of gratitude. 3 small things each day. 3 moments, memories, or blessings written down daily. It sounds small, too small to matter, and yet research proves it rewires the brain. Within weeks, our minds start scanning for positives, noticing opportunities, seeing good in places we once overlooked. Imagine what happens when, instead of training our minds on lack and stress, we train them on abundance and hope. The ripples grow. Another practice is the power of exercise, not as punishment for the body, not as another task on a list, but as a profound signal to the brain that we are alive, engaged, and capable. Movement releases endorphins, clears fog, and carves new pathways of energy. In this way, the body becomes an ally of the mind, a partner in joy, and sleep, so often neglected, is revealed as essential. Without it, the brain slips into exhaustion. With it, resilience is restored. Happiness grows in well-rested soil. Shawn tells us about the importance of social connection, perhaps the most powerful factor of all. Relationships are the single greatest predictor of long-term happiness. Not wealth, not fame, not career milestones. Connection. When we are held, seen, and valued, we bloom. You who are listening right now may know this already in your bones. In moments of loneliness, the world feels heavy. In moments of love, even ordinary days glow with meaning. The happiness advantage reminds us that connection is not optional. It is oxygen. And yet, there's something more subtle he teaches: the Tetris Effect. Named after the game where players see patterns of blocks falling. This principle explains how the brain, after repeated exposure, becomes wired to keep seeing those patterns everywhere. If we spend our lives focused on problems, we see only problems. If we spend our lives focused on negatives, our brain will filter the world through that lens. But if we choose to train our minds on possibility, on gratitude, on solutions, then like a skilled Tetris player, we begin to see how the pieces of life fit together. We become wired for joy, for growth, for opportunity. There is also the principle of falling upward. Failure is not the end, but the beginning. In our culture, failure feels like a wall, a signal to stop. But what if failure is the ground we fall on, and from that ground we push ourselves higher? Like a gymnast who uses the mat not as a place of defeat, but as the surface from which to spring, we too can fall upward. Every setback, every mistake becomes fuel for resilience. This mindset, Shawn explains, transforms stress from a weight into a weapon, something we can wield rather than something that crushes us. I remember a moment once when the weight of disappointment sat heavy on my chest. A dream I had worked for crumbled, and I thought it would break me. But in that silence, after the loss, I felt something unexpected. A small voice inside whispered that perhaps this ending was not a punishment, but a redirection. Perhaps I was not being pushed down, but pushed sideways towards something else. And in time, that something else became the most meaningful path I could have walked. That moment taught me what Shawn calls falling upward, that in failure, there is hidden growth waiting to be born. You might think this all sounds inspiring but distant, yet consider this. Thomas Edison, after thousands of failed attempts to create the light bulb, simply said he had not failed but discovered thousands of ways that did not work. His falling upward gave us light itself. Or Oprah Winfrey, fired from her first job as a television anchor, who turned her so-called failure into the soil for her eventual empire of empathy and influence. These lives embody the happiness advantage because they remind us that happiness is not about avoiding pain, but about using pain as a pathway. And so, as we move deeper into this conversation, let this mantra settle inside you. Happiness is the advantage. Repeat it softly to yourself. Happiness is the advantage. It is not waiting for us on the other side of success. It is here now, available in the smallest acts, the quietest choices, the gentlest rewiring of thought. Stress is often seen as the villain in our story, the shadow that darkens everything. But Shawn Achor invites us to see it differently, to imagine stress as the weight in a gym. Without weight, our muscles never grow. With too much, we break. But with the right balance, we grow stronger, more capable, more resilient. This is what he calls the stress paradox. The idea that stress, when reframed, can be fuel rather than fire. If we see challenges as threats, they crush us. But if we see them as opportunities, as signals to rise, they sculpt us. Our interpretation, more than the event itself, determines whether stress harms or helps us. Think about how soldiers, athletes, entrepreneurs, all those who endure immense pressure, often describe the same stress that once scared them becoming the very force that sharpened them. The difference lies not in the stress, but in the story told about it. If you whisper to yourself, "This is breaking me," it becomes true. If you whisper, "This is making me stronger," your body and brain align with that belief. Our thoughts are not passive. They are blueprints. The happiness advantage teaches us to draw blueprints that serve us, to build mental architecture that supports growth. There is also the concept of the 20-second rule, a deceptively simple yet profound tool. Shawn explains that our behavior is often shaped by friction, by the ease or difficulty of starting a habit. If we want to break a bad habit, we increase the friction. If we want to start a good one, we decrease it. Imagine you want to stop scrolling late at night, place your phone across the room instead of beside your bed. Those 20 seconds of extra effort create enough friction to shift the pattern. Or imagine you want to start exercising, lay out your shoes and clothes where you cannot miss them, making the act of starting effortless. These small shifts, reducing or increasing friction by seconds, change the trajectory of our lives. The 20-second rule is not about willpower, but about design. It is about reshaping the environment so that good habits grow naturally, like a vine guided towards sunlight. The beauty of this is that it reminds us we do not have to rely solely on inner strength. We can lean on outer design. We can craft a life that nudges us toward joy. Too often we blame ourselves for weakness when in truth, we are simply fighting an environment rigged against us. By changing the design, we change the outcome. Happiness becomes easier because the path to it is smoother. And then there is the power of the fulcrum and the lever. Imagine a seesaw, where you place the fulcrum, that central point of balance, determines how much weight you can lift with the lever. Our mindset is the fulcrum. The way we frame our circumstances determines the power we have to move them. If the fulcrum is fixed in a place of negativity, the lever barely moves. If we shift it to positivity, suddenly the same effort lifts more. Our interpretation is everything. The same job, the same relationship, the same day can feel heavy or light depending on where we place the fulcrum. Think of Viktor Frankl, the Holocaust survivor and author of Man's Search for Meaning. He endured unimaginable suffering, yet he discovered that even when everything was stripped away, one freedom remained: the freedom to choose one's perspective. That choice became his fulcrum. It gave him the strength to survive when others could not. This is the essence of Shawn's teaching. We cannot always change what happens to us, but we can change how we see it. And that shift in vision changes the entire weight of our lives. You who are listening right now may feel caught in circumstances you cannot control. You may feel like life has dealt you a hand too heavy to hold. But pause for a moment and consider this. If you shift your fulcrum, if you tilt the lever of your perspective toward possibility, you may find that what once felt unbearable begins to move. It does not mean the pain vanishes, but it means you are no longer powerless before it. Perspective becomes power. As we move through these ideas, the happiness advantage keeps reminding us of one central truth. Joy is not naive, not denial, not pretending everything is fine. Joy is strength. Joy is resilience. Joy is strategy. It equips us to face reality more powerfully, to create outcomes that despair never could. It is not soft. It is steel wrapped in light. At the midpoint of this journey, it is natural to feel a tug of resistance. A part of you may whisper, "This sounds beautiful, but life is too hard, too messy, too painful for happiness to matter." That voice is real. It comes from wounds, from disappointments, from years of believing happiness is a luxury reserved for others. Let us honor that voice for a moment. It is the voice of survival, the voice that has kept you here despite everything. But then let us gently offer it another truth. Happiness is not a luxury. It is survival itself. It is the strategy that allows us not only to endure, but to rise. And yes, change is possible, even for you, even here, even now. Breathe that in. Happiness is the advantage. Say it again. Happiness is the advantage. Not tomorrow, not when you achieve more, not when life finally relents. Here, in this moment, with what you have, with who you are. It begins now. One of the most tender truths within Shawn's work is that happiness is contagious. Just like a smile can light up a stranger's face across the street, your joy, your positivity, your resilience ripples outward into every person you touch. Researchers have found that when one person becomes happier, their friends, their neighbors, even their coworkers begin to shift too. It is as though the human heart is tuned like a stringed instrument, vibrating sympathetically with the energy around it. And when you choose to live in joy, you are not only changing your own life, you are quietly transforming the lives of those near you. This is why cultivating happiness is not selfish. It is generous. It is a gift. The happier you become, the more you give permission for others to step into that same light. Think of leaders who inspire entire teams not by fear, but by enthusiasm. Richard Branson, the founder of Virgin, is one example Shawn often points to. His success is not built merely on business strategy, but on an infectious positivity that makes people want to follow him. His joy becomes the engine that drives innovation. When we encounter someone like that, we feel lifted, and then we carry that lift forward into our own circles. In the same way, when we practice happiness, we are not only bettering ourselves, we are creating a network of rising tides that carry others upward too. But happiness is not always about grand gestures. Often, it is about the smallest moments of kindness. A warm word to a colleague, a moment of listening without distraction, holding a door, sending a thank you note, offering a smile. Shawn's research proves that acts of kindness release serotonin in both the giver and the receiver, creating what psychologists call a helper's high. Imagine a world where each of us offered just one small act of kindness each day. The ripple effect would be immeasurable. This is the happiness advantage in its most human form, changing lives, one small act at a time. And yet, let us not forget that cultivating happiness also requires forgiveness of self. We live in a culture that demands perfection, that whispers we are only worthy if we achieve more, earn more, prove more. But the happiness advantage reminds us that perfection is not the goal. Connection, growth, and presence are. There will be days when joy feels far away, when the mind reverts to fear or negativity. That is natural. The path to happiness is not a straight line, but a spiral, circling again and again through growth, setback, renewal. What matters is that we keep returning to it, that we remind ourselves, happiness is the advantage and it is always within reach. This is where ritual becomes so important. Daily habits are not just tasks, they are anchors. Gratitude journals, morning walks, mindful pauses. These practices train our brains to return to joy even when storms rage. Think of a lighthouse. The waves crash, the sky darkens, the wind howls, but the light keeps shining. Rituals are the beams of that light, guiding us back again and again, reminding us where the shore is. Shawn's work also reveals the power of anticipation. Happiness is not only found in the moment of achievement, but in the looking forward, the imagining, the savoring of what is to come. Planning a vacation, anticipating a reunion, even daydreaming about a future possibility, all of these can bring us joy long before the moment arrives. And so, by planning small joys on the horizon, we give our brains something to reach for. It is like stringing lanterns down a dark path, each one pulling us forward with light. Perhaps one of the most liberating truths in the happiness advantage is the idea that happiness is a choice. Not in the shallow sense of forcing a smile or pretending pain does not exist, but in the deeper sense that we always retain some power over where we place our focus. We cannot control every circumstance, but we can control how we interpret it, how we respond, what story we tell about it. Each day, each hour, is filled with countless crossroads, small choices that either lead us toward joy or away from it. Choosing happiness is not about ignoring the dark, but about lighting a candle and carrying it with us through the dark. And here's the truth. Science shows us that this choice becomes easier the more we practice it. Just as lifting weights strengthens muscle, choosing joy strengthens neural pathways. Over time, it becomes our default. The brain is malleable, plastic, capable of rewiring itself in response to where we place our attention. That means happiness is not a fixed trait, but a learned skill. Even if you have spent years in negativity, you are not condemned to it. You can retrain your brain, moment by moment, choice by choice, until joy becomes natural again. Imagine your mind as a garden. Negativity is the weed that grows without effort, but positivity is the flower that blooms with attention. Each moment of gratitude is water. Each act of kindness is sunlight. Each reframe of stress as growth is soil turned rich and soft. Over time, the garden fills with blossoms and the weeds retreat. This is the happiness advantage, choosing to tend the garden, knowing that what you nurture will grow. And so, as we near the later part of this reflection, remember this: Happiness is not about changing who you are. It is about remembering who you have always been beneath the noise, the fear, the striving. It is about returning to the joy that is your birthright, the light you carried as a child before the world told you to earn it. You do not have to wait for success to be happy. You can be happy now, and in that happiness, you will find the energy, clarity, and strength to create a success that is both sustainable and soulful. There is something humbling in realizing that our minds are always training, whether we are aware of it or not. Each thought is a repetition, each focus a kind of practice. If we dwell on fear, our minds become fluent in fear. If we dwell on possibility, we become fluent in possibility. Shawn Achor reminds us that this is not abstract, it is neuroscience. The brain strengthens the connections it uses most often. It is like walking through a field of tall grass. The first time, the path is rough and uneven. But walk it again and again, and soon a clear trail forms. That is how thought works. What we repeat becomes who we are. Which means happiness is not a gift reserved for the lucky, but a path we can all carve, step by step, with the choices we make daily. This is where the ripple becomes most profound, because as we strengthen our own pathways toward joy, we model that possibility for others. A parent who reframes stress as growth teaches their child resilience. A manager who chooses gratitude instead of criticism fosters a culture of optimism. A friend who listens deeply reminds another that they are not alone. Each act, each thought, creates ripples. And sometimes those ripples reach farther than we will ever know. You might smile at someone today, and years later, they may remember that smile as the thing that gave them strength when they needed it most. That is the invisible power of the happiness advantage. One of the most beautiful applications of Shawn's work is in education. He describes how students who are taught to focus on their strengths, who are reminded that their brains can grow, who are invited to celebrate progress instead of perfection, consistently outperform those who are taught only through pressure and fear. The same is true for us as adults. We blossom when we feel encouraged, when our strengths are noticed, when we are reminded that growth is possible. Pressure without joy crushes, but joy with challenge creates extraordinary growth. This is why workplaces that cultivate happiness are not only more humane but also more productive. Google, for example, famously invests in creating environments where employees feel connected, supported, and joyful. Their success is not despite this focus on happiness, but because of it. When people feel valued, when they feel their lives matter beyond output, they give their best energy freely. They innovate, they collaborate, they stay. Happiness is not a distraction from success. It is the soil from which it grows. And so, what does this mean for you? It means that your happiness is not a side project. It is not something you pursue only when there is time left over. It is the core of everything else. It is the fuel that will carry you through difficulty, the lens that will help you see opportunity, the magnet that will draw others to your vision. If you treat happiness as optional, your life will feel like pushing a heavy cart uphill. But if you make it foundational, you will find the hill is not as steep as you thought, and the cart begins to roll forward almost on its own. There is a quiet kind of courage required to choose happiness. It means daring to believe in light when darkness feels overwhelming. It means choosing gratitude when fear screams louder. It means whispering yes to joy, even when the world tells you to keep striving harder. This courage does not roar. It glows. It sustains. It uplifts. And it is within you, waiting. So let us gather the threads of Shawn's teachings together. Gratitude rewires the brain to see abundance. Exercise and sleep strengthen the body as partners in joy. Social connection nourishes us with belonging. The Tetris Effect trains the mind to see patterns of possibility. Falling upward teaches us to rise stronger from failure. The 20-second rule shapes our habits through design rather than willpower. The fulcrum and lever show us that perspective creates power. Stress, reframed, becomes fuel for growth. And happiness itself becomes contagious, rippling outward into every life we touch. Each of these ideas is not just theory, but practice, a way to live, a way to thrive. And maybe now, as you sit with these words, you feel both the beauty and the weight of it. Beauty in knowing change is possible. Weight in knowing the choice rests with you. That is the tender paradox of transformation. No one else can do it for you, yet you do not have to do it alone. Every moment of joy you choose connects you to countless others who are choosing the same. We are all ripples in the same pond. So pause and imagine your life 6 months from now, if you were to begin today. Imagine waking with gratitude, already written into your bones. Imagine handling stress not as an enemy, but as a challenge that sharpens you. Imagine habits flowing effortlessly because your environment carries you forward. Imagine relationships deepening because your presence is fuller, your energy lighter. Imagine how far those ripples could reach to your family, your friends, your work, even strangers who cross your path. This is not fantasy. This is the happiness advantage unfolding in real time. And so, let us return to the mantra, one last time. Happiness is the advantage. It is the seed, the soil, the water, the sun. It is the ripple, the fulcrum, the lever. It is the thread woven quietly through every triumph and every heartbreak. It is not waiting in the distance. It is here. It is yours. As we close this reflection, I want to leave you with a quiet invitation. Choose one small act of happiness today. Write down 3 gratitudes. Send a kind message. Step outside and let the air fill your lungs. Do one thing, however small, that tilts your mind toward joy. Then notice the ripple it creates. Notice how it feels in your body, how it softens your heart, how it shifts the light in the room. This is how transformation begins, not with a revolution, but with a single choice. Picture a sunrise. The sky is still dark, the world still hushed, but the horizon glows faintly, softly, promising the day. That glow is within you. It is your happiness rising. Let it shine, and let the ripples carry far. If this message has touched you, I invite you warmly to like, share, comment, and subscribe. Share your reflections, your moments of joy, your struggles, your victories. Your words matter, and when you share them, they may become the very ripple that someone else needs. Together, we carry the light forward. Together, we live the happiness advantage.